Hey guys, and welcome to Faewood. So this is the next part of my costume where I've got this lovely little underbust corset belt that I got from Wish, and I have some gloves as well which I'll be showing, and I decorate those to suit the rest of the costume. So I decided to go with some cogs, drawing on the observatory part of my necklace and some of the mechanics of the observatory, and I just liked the idea of having a bit of a steampunk aspect to the costume. And then I've gone ahead and used some of those plastic crystals that I used for my headpiece. If you saw that video, these are the same plastic crystals. They're actually beads. They've got a hole in them as well, which is perfect. And I just got these from eBay, and they were really cheap. They're just sort of like table scatters, I think, but they do have a hole in it, so they are a bead, which helps when you're doing something like this because you can actually sew through them, and I did actually do that to add some more stability to the piece. So I kept my beadwork to the center of the belt, and then I wanted to put a little bit onto the top of these gloves as well. I got these from Wish as well. Now these aren't actual watch parts, they are made specially for jewelry making, the cogs that I'm using right here. You could use watch parts though. There's so many different cogs available now because steampunk is such a popular medium. I think I did get these from Etsy, but I've gotten cogs from so many different places that it's hard to keep track of. Some I know I've got from Over the Rainbow, which is an Australian shop, but they definitely have these type of ones on Etsy all the time, and they have some things on eBay as well, and other bead shops will stock, things like this. So they're just the brass charm ones. You can get different colours as well. So I used E6000, and I just used a skewer, as you saw there, just trying to kind of neaten up my glue because it was kind of like seeping out from the cogs, which is not really what you want. So it did make a little bit of a mess around things. Now, to add strength to everything, where possible, I wanted to anchor the beadwork. So you can see there are some areas where I can, use a bead to sort of help secure something to the base. Like I used a size 8 higher metallic purple for this part here, and the colour was just beautiful, and it helped to anchor that piece to the backing. The colours I've gone for are very vibrant purples and like that fuchsia pink, because they're sort of the colours you see in the dark crystal. They do look a little bit more muted on this brown background, but I'm okay with that. It looks quite nice on there, I think. And I liked the idea of these little crystals sort of looking like they're growing onto the other elements of my costume, almost like crystal barnacles or something. Now I didn't bead onto the elastic part. Sometimes when you bead on, like sew or bead onto elastic, you can have your stitches snap when the elastic stretches, depending on how you do those stitches. So I definitely just decided to keep it in the center there. And this belt, I really love this sort of style of corset belt. It's, as I said, elastic, and it's got a Velcro back. And it's one of those one size fits most situations. So it stretches a fair bit. I don't know how much it would stretch, to be honest. I think possibly a size 18 to 20 could still use it, but it would be, it might be a bit tight. And, you know, I think size 8 to 10 possibly would be able to use it. Size 10 for sure. Size 8 might be a little loose. I'm not sure exactly how many sizes could use this belt. But I do like this one. So to keep it looking very natural, what I tried to do, I used some amethyst chip beads that I had, and that really added an element of a natural look to the plastic crystal beads, because like those, although they do kind of look natural, which is why I really do like them, they're all about the same size. So what I found with using the amethyst chips is it just added that variation of size. And then alongside that, I've used some fire polished glass in this sort of really nice fuchsia pink shading to purple. I had these little faceted rich purple beads, and I've actually used a fair few sequins as well. I really wanted to try and, you know, have that really magical sort of glint of colour coming through, and because of how dark the backdrop of my beadwork was and how sort of muted some things were looking, the adding just those A-B elements, you know, Aurora Borealis sequins, just add that really nice pop of colour, and you know, you get that little glint. You know, depending on how you turn, you might catch a little glint of the sequin. So I've sort of layered those up with the beads. Like on some of the beads, I'd pop a tiny little sequin because I had these mini sequins. And then underneath some beads, I had these larger sort of flower-shaped, quite three-dimensional sequins. And I'd pop one of those, then a bead, and then a little seed bead at the end, and then you sew back down through the, like, you, once you've put that seed bead on, you don't sew back through the seed bead, you just sew back through everything else again. It's called a stop stitch, and it's basically called that because that seed bead stops the beadwork from going anywhere. It adds sort of an anchor point. So you need to make sure that last bead that you put on is larger than the whole of all of your previous beads. So if you're using something with a large hole, you'll need a larger bead to add as the stop. And then you just virtually sew back through everything except for the stop bead. You only sew through that the once. Generally, stop stitch is only 2, maybe 3 beads. Any longer and it starts being referred to as a fringe, but realistically the technique of making a fringe and doing a stop stitch is exactly the same. It's just that fringe is more beads really, and usually hangs off something. And I like the stop stitch. It's a good way to be able to use larger beads in embroidery beadwork. It also fills in areas quite quickly, or it can, depending on the beads that you use. So that can be handy. I really hope I haven't repeated what I've been saying in this recording a few times. My voice recorder decided not to record me when I did this the first time, so I've sort of forgotten what I said in the previous recording and this one. And yeah, hopefully I remember to say everything, and hopefully I haven't said things a million times because I forgot that I said it. So there's that. So this is definitely not a symmetrical design. Probably no surprise if you've seen me talk about my work before, because I do tend to go for more organic shapes. But you can see that there's an element of symmetry to this design, in that each side I've used 4 cogs, but I purposely had a different order in the cogs. I kept a similar kind of placement because I don't want it to be too random or too busy, but I've definitely kept that real natural element to it, mainly as well because I am doing crystal, and you know, crystal is a natural thing and will grow from things in a randomized sort of way. And, you know, machinery as well is rarely symmetrical. So it's just keeping those things in mind. Like, I'm not opposed to symmetry at all, but for this purpose, I really felt like it needed to be organic. Now, one thing I didn't do for this piece, and you could potentially do, I didn't put any backing on the underside of this. So the stitches are sort of exposed. That was one thing I did consider, and I might even still do it, to be honest, just in case I do want to wear this, you know, multiple times and to make sure it's really strong. I figured it would be okay for the night at least. But yeah, it does pay to cover the stitch work with something. I figure if I do that, I'll probably use ultra suede, but I might not take it out to the edge and just keep it in the center so you don't see it at all, and it really is just to strengthen that underside of those pieces. So I've used the same beads on the gloves as I did for the belt. I want to keep it very consistent. I don't want to cover either of these either. I do want to see a lot of the brown and to have them still look very warrior-like. So I really just wanted sections of this on them. So I did keep the beadwork to the top of the gloves. So I tried to think about keeping an element of, how would I say it, just trying to keep beadwork on each cog, you know, so that it's balanced is probably the word I'm looking for. So you can see, you know, I've done little clusters of beadwork around the cog there, but then I make sure to include additional clusters down further. But the way I did the gloves was to use the largest cogs up the top and have it taper off a little bit as it got, you know, closer to the other side of the glove. So, you know, where the hand is, although I don't go that far down, but like the beadwork basically tapers off just a little. But I am wanting to keep a bit of balance as well, so as in, you know, not just have a huge cluster of beads somewhere and then a whole lot of nothing or something like that. And to make it very natural, it's a good idea not to have things evenly spaced, because in nature a lot of things would be random and not evenly spaced out, and it starts seeming a bit man-made when you say if I did all my beads, you know, an inch apart from each other or like a centimetre apart from each other, and it was quite a pattern. It's not natural looking anymore. So have a think about that when you're doing this type of, you know, organic sort of beadwork. You really want to make sure that things are different spaces apart, different number of clusters. Like if you do a cluster of say 5 beads somewhere, don't make every cluster of beads 5, or again it starts seeming a bit like a pattern. So, you know, do a few clusters of 3 beads, or do a couple of individual beads, something along those lines. Or, you know, different sizes of beads. So one cluster is just small beads, one's a mix, that sort of thing. And then you really get that natural organic look. So you can see I actually unlaced the glove a bit just so I can get in there a bit easier while I'm beading. Definitely recommend, if you're, you know, beading some gloves, to do the same thing so that it's easier on yourself when you're doing this. I'm just using my same Nemo thread that I usually use. You don't have to use Nemo, you could use any beading thread. I just seem to have a lot of Nemo around, but I did like the Ceylon and Eslon bead thread as well, and I've used some other brands as well. So, you know, whatever is your favourite type of beadwork, use that. So you can see I've put a sequin first and then a crystal and a little seed bead. So you just get this little peak of that sequin from the base of this bead, because it's just a slight bit bigger than the bead. And so I really liked having just a little bit of it showing. I didn't want to see just full-on sequins, because I'm not trying to make an evening gown or some such. So I am still trying to look a little bit like some sort of magical warrior, you know, crystal maiden. I don't know really what you would describe it, but I definitely just wanted little peaks of the sequins coming out. Now it's actually fluffy on the underside of this, which was quite nice because you can't see the stitches really, and also it's black and my thread was black, so again it's good for hiding the thread. So that's the first glove done, and on to the second glove. Now, if you were doing something that was very sharp crystals, so probably your Swarovskis or, you know, like bicone type beads and that sort of thing, you could definitely use like a fire line or something similar to that. And or I actually quite like some of the other multi-filament threads. Some of them can be a little bit thick though, so like is it dandelion, I think, was one that I quite liked, and I'll use if I feel like I need the added strength in things. I felt like this would be okay, this one, but I do need to like remind myself sometimes to think about using a stronger thread in certain places, because I have had crystals that cut through the thread if it's somewhere where that's going to get a lot of wear. Hopefully this one will be okay. I did go through everything numerous times. I don't show a lot of that because it's really boring for you guys to watch me sew through something 5 times, but you know, I did go back through things at least a couple of times. Especially I would recommend that with the stop stitch, because it can easily become loose, the stop stitch, especially if you're moving from one part of a piece a fair distance to the next part. I would recommend, and I often will do this as well, is knot the thread underneath your work before moving to the next area. So I'll do a stitch, you know, or a couple of stitches in one area. I'll knot it on the underside, of course, so that you can't see it, but and then before moving to the next area. So if one section does become loose or breaks for some reason, it's not going to unravel everything. So it's just a way to add some more strength to things. Well, we're just about finished the last glove, so that's almost it for this video. I hope you're enjoying seeing the costume come together, and you know, maybe you'll give something like this a go yourself. Just because you buy something without beadwork or without any additional decoration doesn't mean you can't use your imagination to do it yourself and add whatever you like to the piece. So, you know, I encourage you to give it a go. If you like these videos and you want to see more from me, make sure you do hit subscribe. And if you like it, hit the like button and all of that jazz. And anyway, I shall see you next time in Faewood. Bye, guys.